The grocery cart does not lie. 20 years ago, $80 filled it edge to edge. Ground beef, bread, eggs, a 12-pack of soda, cereal, a bag of apples, and you still walked out with change and a full cart. You did not have to choose between the brand name and the store brand. You did not do math in your head while putting things in. Today, that exact same list costs you $160, sometimes $180, and you are standing at the checkout, watching the number climb, thinking either prices are out of control or something else entirely is going on. That question is the most important financial question you can ask right now, because the answer changes everything about what you should do with your money. Here is where most financial conversations go completely off track. They say prices are going up, and sure, the number on the price tag is higher than it was 5 years ago. But that framing makes the grocery store look like the problem. The grocery store did not decide anything. The eggs did not hold a meeting and vote to cost more. The produce aisle is not conspiring against you. What changed is the instrument you are using to pay for things. Your dollar is going down. The dollar is shrinking. That is a completely different problem than prices going up. And more importantly, it has a completely different solution. This distinction matters more than it might seem at first. If you think prices are going up, you think about budgeting. You cut back, you look for coupons, you switch to store brands, you try to spend less. All reasonable responses to a pricing problem. But if you understand that the dollar is shrinking, you start asking a much more important question. Where do I put my savings so they do not shrink along with the dollar? You stop trying to spend less and start thinking about where your money lives. That shift in thinking is what separates people who maintain purchasing power over decades from people who work hard their entire lives and still end up with less than they started with. Buffett understood this earlier than almost anyone in modern finance. In his 1977 shareholder letter, he wrote that inflation is a far more devastating tax than anything that has been enacted by our legislatures. He was not being poetic. He was describing a mechanism, a wealth transfer, one that happens quietly every single day, without anyone voting on it and without you receiving a bill in the mail. The dollar in your savings account looks the same as it did last year, same number, same account. But the cart that used to cost $80 now costs $160. The tax was collected. You just did not see it happen. If this kind of thinking resonates with you, using Buffett's framework to understand what is actually happening to money, subscribe to this channel. We break down the financial machine in language anyone can understand. No jargon, no hype. Just the honest mechanics of how money actually works. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Let us talk about how the dollar actually shrinks, because once you see the mechanism clearly, you will never look at a price tag the same way again. The simplest version is this. Imagine there are 10 apples in the world and $10 in the world. Each dollar buys 1 apple. Now the government creates 10 more dollars. There are still 10 apples. But now $20 are chasing those same 10 apples. Each dollar buys half an apple. The apples did not become more expensive. The dollars became less powerful. This is inflation in its most honest form, not prices going up, but money going down. The grocery store is just where you feel the result. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913 specifically to manage the money supply, meaning to control how many dollars exist in the economy. Before 1913, the dollar was tied much more directly to gold. You could not simply create more dollars without having more gold to back them. That physical constraint kept a ceiling on how much the currency could be diluted. The gold did not care about economic conditions or political pressure. You needed actual gold to create actual dollars. That automatic break kept the dollar relatively stable for over a century before the Fed's creation. Then came 1971. On August 15th of that year, President Nixon announced that the United States would no longer redeem dollars for gold at a fixed rate. The official phrase used was temporarily suspend the convertibility of the dollar into gold. That suspension has been permanent for 54 years. From that moment forward, the dollar became what economists call fiat currency, backed by nothing physical, only by the promise and credibility of the government, only by the trust that the dollar would remain useful. The moment that tether to gold was cut, there was no longer a physical limit on how many dollars could exist. What happened to the dollar after 1971 is not a matter of political opinion. It is documented public data available from the Federal Reserve and the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Since 1971, the dollar has lost more than 85% of its purchasing power. A dollar from 1971 buys less than 15 cents worth of goods and services that the same dollar bought then. That is not an abstract statistic. That is the grocery cart. That is the gas station. That is your rent. The mechanism has been running for more than 50 years. The receipts have been piling up ever since. The math is worth slowing down on for a moment because most people understand inflation intellectually but have never run the numbers concretely. If you had held $10,000 in cash since 1971, not spent it, not invested it, just sealed it in an envelope and kept it, that $10,000 today has the purchasing power of approximately $1,500 from 1971. You did not lose a single bill. You have the same $10,000 in your hand on paper, but $9,000 of real purchasing power has been quietly transferred away from you through the mechanism of money creation over 5 decades. No theft, no crisis, no dramatic moment, just the machine running quietly in the background. And the machine accelerated significantly in recent years. In 2020, in response to the pandemic, the Federal Reserve and the Treasury created approximately $4.5 trillion in roughly 2 years. To put that in context, the United States took more than 200 years from its founding through 2008 to create approximately $900 billion in total. In 2 years, they added the equivalent of 5 times that total in new money. More dollars, same goods. The cart that used to cost $80 now costs $160. You are not imagining it. You are not bad at budgeting. The machine is working exactly as it has been designed to work. So here is the question that follows logically from everything we have covered. If the government can create as many dollars as it decides to create, and creating more dollars is the exact mechanism that makes your existing dollars worth less, what can they not create more of? What exists in limited fixed geological quantities that no meeting, no vote, no executive order can change? That question is the doorway to understanding silver, not as a speculative trade, not as a get-rich scheme, as a different category of money, one that exists by geology and chemistry, not by political decision. If you are seeing this for the first time and it is clicking into place, write in the comments, "I choose real money." I want to know how many people watching this are beginning to think about money differently, as something that must be earned or mined, not just created. Silver has been used as money for approximately 2,500 years, not as jewelry, not as decoration, but as the primary medium of exchange in most of the developed world for most of human history. The Roman Empire paid its legions in silver. The word salary traces back to the Latin salarium, linked to the silver payments Roman soldiers received. Ancient Greece built its economy on silver drachmas. The Spanish conquistadors, upon discovering the silver mountains of Potosi in modern Bolivia in the 1500s, flooded Europe with so much new silver that they accidentally caused a continent-wide inflation, because suddenly there were far more silver coins chasing the same goods. Even in the 1500s, more money meant more inflation. The mechanism is not new. Silver became money across every civilization, not because rulers declared it valuable, but because it naturally has the properties that money requires. It is scarce enough that you cannot find it everywhere, but not so scarce that you cannot conduct normal commerce with it. It is durable. It does not corrode, rot, or disintegrate over time. It is divisible. You can cut it into smaller pieces for smaller transactions. It is homogeneous. 1 ounce of pure silver is identical to any other ounce of pure silver anywhere in the world. It is portable. You can carry meaningful value in a small physical weight. And crucially, nobody can manufacture more of it by political decision. These are not arbitrary characteristics. They are the specific properties that money requires to function over centuries. There is approximately 1.5 to 2 billion ounces of investable silver above ground in the entire world today. That sounds substantial until you run the math against world population. 8 billion people on the planet. That works out to roughly 1/4 ounce of investable silver per person in the world. Global mining adds somewhere between 800 million and 1 billion ounces per year. And the vast majority of that is consumed immediately by industrial demand, leaving very little for monetary accumulation. No government can convene a meeting on Monday and decide to double the world's silver supply by Friday. Geology does not respond to policy. Since 1971, when the dollar officially decoupled from gold and became fiat, something very specific happened to silver when priced in those new fiat dollars. In 1971, silver was trading at approximately $1.50 per ounce. Today, silver trades in the range of $28 to $32 per ounce. The dollar, over that same 54-year period, lost more than 85% of its value. Silver, priced in those weakening dollars, moved in the opposite direction. Not because silver became more popular or more fashionable, but because the measuring stick, the dollar, kept getting shorter, while the thing being measured, the ounce of silver, stayed the same size. Now here is something that gets interesting. In 1997 and 1998, Warren Buffett purchased approximately 130 million ounces of silver for Berkshire Hathaway. This represented roughly 30% of the world's entire annual mine production at the time. He did not announce the position voluntarily. He disclosed it because he was legally required to once the position crossed a threshold requiring public reporting. When pressed to explain it, Buffett described a classic supply-demand fundamental imbalance. Industrial demand for silver had been consistently exceeding annual mine production for several years. More silver was being consumed than was being dug out of the ground. A structural scarcity was developing in real time. Buffett bought the undervalued fundamental reality. He always does. What Buffett identified in 1997 is the same structural reality that exists today, except amplified significantly by a demand driver that barely existed at the time he made his purchase. The supply-demand imbalance he recognized has not been resolved. It has grown. Mine production remains constrained. The timeline to develop a new silver mine, from initial geological survey to first production, runs 7 to 12 years. Supply simply cannot respond quickly when demand accelerates suddenly, and as we are about to discuss, demand has added an entirely new and very large source of consumption that was not a significant factor in 1997. The other key distinction between silver and gold, which shapes how you should think about both of them: gold is almost entirely a monetary asset. People hold gold primarily as a store of value and an inflation hedge. Its industrial consumption represents maybe 10 to 15% of total annual demand. Silver sits closer to a 50-50 split between monetary demand and industrial demand. This dual structure means silver has two completely separate reasons to be in demand simultaneously, operating on different tracks. Monetary demand responds to inflation fears and dollar weakness. Industrial demand responds to manufacturing needs and technological adoption. Both can increase at the same time for different reasons. This is a different risk and opportunity profile than gold. If you are finding real value in what we are unpacking here, hit the like button on this video. It is a small action, but it tells me this content is worth continuing, and it helps more people find this channel at the right moment. 6,000. That is the approximate number of industrial applications for silver documented by the Silver Institute. Your smartphone contains approximately 0.3 grams of silver. In the circuitry, the touchscreen sensors, and the connectors. Your laptop, your car's electronic systems, hospital surgical instruments. Silver is naturally antimicrobial, which is why it has been used in medical contexts for centuries before antibiotics existed. Water filtration systems, solar panels, antifungal coatings. The chemical and physical properties of silver make it not interchangeable, irreplaceable, in dozens of separate industrial contexts. The solar panel story alone is worth understanding in detail. Each solar panel contains between 13 and 20 grams of silver, embedded in the photovoltaic cells, where it conducts electricity more efficiently than any other material at an affordable cost. The world installed approximately 400 gigawatts of new solar capacity in 2024. At 13 grams per panel, that is an enormous consumption of silver that did not exist as a demand category 20 years ago. And the trajectory is upward. Solar installation targets for 2030 suggest the energy transition alone could consume 80 to 85% of annual silver mine production. Electric vehicles add further demand. They use 2 to 3 times more silver than a traditional combustion engine vehicle in the wiring, battery management systems, and charging infrastructure. The more EVs on the road, the more silver is consumed per vehicle on the planet. The supply side of this equation has not kept up. Global silver mine production has been essentially flat for the past several years, hovering between 800 and 900 million ounces annually. It is not growing at the rate that demand is growing. The reason is structural and well understood. It takes 7 to 12 years to develop a new silver mine from initial discovery to first production. You need geological surveys, permitting, environmental review, capital investment, construction, and then ramp-up time. When demand accelerates, supply cannot follow immediately. The gap widens. The Silver Institute, the industry's primary research organization, whose members include the major mining companies and refiners, documented annual silver deficits of several hundred million ounces per year from 2021 through 2023. Demand exceeded supply by hundreds of millions of ounces annually. The gap was filled by drawing down existing above-ground stockpiles. Those stockpiles are finite. They cannot be replenished by decision. This is not a fringe newsletter or a precious metals dealer trying to sell you something. It is documented data from the industry's own research body. Now pay attention to this next part, because it connects threads that most financial content never puts together. The same government policy decisions that are making the dollar worth less, the spending, the programs, the clean energy transition subsidies and mandates, are simultaneously accelerating industrial demand for silver. Solar farm mandates, electric vehicle incentives, grid modernization, infrastructure spending. Every one of these policy choices increases the industrial consumption of silver. The same mechanism that is diluting the dollar is also funding and mandating the consumption of the thing that cannot be diluted. This is not a deliberate conspiracy. It is an unintended structural consequence. But the math does not care whether it was intended. If you have been studying money, have been thinking about the inflation problem, and feel like the gap between understanding and action has been the obstacle, check the first pinned comment below this video. It is there for people who are ready to go beyond theory. Let us handle the most common objections directly, because I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. I do not have money for this. Let us be specific about what getting started actually costs. One American silver eagle, A 1-ounce coin, minted by the United States government, with its silver content and purity guaranteed, costs approximately $32 to $35 at the time of this recording. That is the price of a dinner for two at a sit-down casual restaurant. That is roughly 1 tank of gas for many vehicles. That is not a savings account minimum. That is not an investment platform onboarding fee. It is a single purchase that results in 1 ounce of real, physical, verified silver sitting in your hand. The financial barrier to entry is not the obstacle. The mental framing that silver is for wealthy people with vaults is the obstacle. But Buffett sold his silver position. Doesn't that mean he changed his mind and moved on? He did sell in 2006, but this objection fundamentally misunderstands how Buffett operates as an investor. He buys based on fundamentals. When those fundamentals justified the position, he bought. When his assessment of those fundamentals changed, which he has never explained in detail publicly, he exited. He has done the same thing with airline stocks, with newspaper companies, with dozens of positions over 60-plus years of active investing. The fact that he exited a position does not invalidate the framework he used to enter it. And the framework, find real assets where supply is constrained and demand is growing or undervalued, is exactly the framework that applies to the current silver situation. Positions change. Principles do not. Silver is too volatile. I cannot handle those price swings. The volatility is real and worth acknowledging directly. In 2020, silver dropped from $18 per ounce all the way down to $12, and then recovered to $29 before the year was over. The price moved more than 100% within a single calendar year. For a short-term trader, that kind of movement is terrifying and genuinely dangerous. For someone thinking in decades rather than months, which is Buffett's explicit framework, short-term price volatility is noise around a long-term fundamental direction. Buffett's own description. In the short run, the market is a voting machine. In the long run, it is a weighing machine. The 1964 silver quarter that still buys a gallon of gas today is the weighing machine delivering its verdict after 60 years. I should just stick to S&P 500 index funds. Buffett agrees with you for the majority of your investable savings. His will directs 90% of the money designated for his wife into a Vanguard S&P 500 index fund. He has said publicly and repeatedly that for most investors, a simple index fund is the right answer. This video is not arguing against index funds. It is asking a different question. What percentage of your savings currently sits in an asset that cannot be created by policy decision? For most people, the honest answer is 0. Not because they disagree with the idea, because they have never seriously thought about it in these explicit terms. This sounds like it belongs in conspiracy theory territory. Every piece of data referenced in this video is publicly available. The Federal Reserve publishes money supply data at federalreserve.gov. The Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes CPI data monthly. The Silver Institute publishes annual supply and demand data in their World Silver Survey. The Treasury publishes deficit figures publicly. The U.S. Mint publishes coin sales data. None of this is hidden. None of it requires special access or inside information. The purchasing power destruction of the dollar is documented by the government's own agencies. The silver supply-demand imbalance is documented by the industry's own research organization. The only unusual thing about this conversation is that most mainstream financial content never has it, because there is no commission in selling you a silver coin. The practical reality of buying silver is much simpler than most people imagine, and this is where the conversation needs to land, in the specific, actionable steps that anyone can follow. The simplest and most direct form of ownership is physical silver, coins and bars that you can hold in your hand. The most recognized and widely traded entry point for a new buyer in the United States is the 1-ounce American Silver Eagle, minted by the United States Mint with a guaranteed weight and purity of 99.9% silver. Other well-regarded options include Canadian maple leafs, Austrian philharmonics, and generic rounds from established private mints. Generic rounds are slightly cheaper because you are paying only for the silver content without the government mint premium, but they are equally valid as silver ownership. The buying process online is genuinely as simple as any other e-commerce purchase. Reputable dealers include APMEX, JM Bullion, SD Bullion, and Money Metals Exchange, all established, highly reviewed, and widely used. You go to the site, select what you want, add it to your cart, enter a payment method, and the silver arrives at your address within a few business days, packaged securely. There is no account to open, no minimum investment, no financial advisor appointment to schedule. This is a purchase. The same process as ordering anything online, except the thing that arrives holds its purchasing power across decades rather than becoming obsolete in 3 years. There are a few things worth avoiding, especially as a first-time buyer. Commemorative coins with very high premiums. These carry significant markups for the artistic design, and when you eventually sell, you will only receive value based on the silver content, not the collectible markup. Leveraged silver ETFs. These are trading instruments designed for sophisticated traders, not ownership vehicles for savings, and buying from dealers without established reviews or reputation. The underlying principle is simple. You want to own the actual metal, not paper that represents ownership of metal. Physical possession in your hand is the point. How much silver to own is a genuinely personal question that depends on your total savings, your other assets, and your comfort level with volatility. Most frameworks that include precious metals suggest 5 to 10% of liquid savings as a reasonable hedge position. If you have $5,000 in savings, that is $250 to $500 in silver, roughly 7 to 15 ounces at current prices. If you have $20,000, it is $1,000 to $2,000. These are not dramatic, life-altering amounts. They are proportional allocations to an asset class that behaves differently from paper currency, that serves a different function in a portfolio. And the storage reality surprises most people who think about this for the first time. A standard tube holding 20 American Silver Eagles, 20 ounces of silver worth roughly $650 at today's prices, fits in the palm of your hand. It weighs about 24 ounces, including the tube. A small fireproof safe handles it easily. A safety deposit box at your local bank handles larger amounts without drama. You do not need a vault. You do not need special infrastructure. You need a secure container, slightly larger than a TV remote. This is accessible to ordinary people with ordinary homes. You also do not need to buy your position all at once. Many people who own silver use the same systematic approach Buffett recommends for regular investors buying index funds. A consistent, mechanical, predetermined purchase on a schedule. $50 per month in silver, $100 per month. Whatever the price is that month, you buy what your budget allows. When silver is at $30 an ounce, your $50 buys you 1.5 ounces. When it drops to $25, your $50 buys you 2 ounces. Over time, you accumulate a position without the stress of trying to find the perfect entry point. Consistency beats timing in silver, as in everything else Buffett recommends. Now let us close the loop we opened at the beginning, because there is one more piece of this story that brings everything together. In 1964, United States quarters were minted from 90% silver. That same year, a gallon of gasoline cost approximately 25 cents at the pump. 1 silver quarter bought 1 gallon of gas. Today, the silver content of that 1964 quarter, based on current spot prices, is worth approximately $5.50 to $6, depending on the day. And a gallon of gas today costs approximately $3.50 to $4 in most of the country. One 1964 silver quarter, melted for its silver content, still roughly buys a gallon of gas 60 years later. The paper quarter from 1964, the same size and shape with the same number printed on it, buys approximately 1/10 of a gallon today. Silver did not go up. Gas did not go up. The dollar went down. This is Buffett's 1977 observation in physical, tangible form, something you can hold in your hand and verify with your own eyes. The mechanism is not theoretical. It is a 60-year demonstration sitting in any coin collection from that era. The silver maintained purchasing power across 6 decades because no one could print more of it. The paper quarter lost 90% of its real value because unlimited amounts of them could be created. There are 2 categories of people who will finish watching this video. The first understands what they heard and does one concrete thing in response, even something as small as buying a single coin. The second understands what they heard, finds it genuinely interesting, and then returns to keeping 100% of their savings in dollars. The difference between these 2 groups is not intelligence, it is not financial sophistication, it is whether understanding created one action. The first group has some savings sitting in something the government cannot manufacture more of. The second group has all of their savings in the thing that is being manufactured constantly. Buffett's rule number 1, never lose money. Silver does not go to zero. It cannot be made illegal to own. It has existed as private property for 2,500 years. It cannot be printed into existence by a central bank. It is real, physical, limited by geology, and has growing industrial demand from an energy transition that governments are actively funding and mandating. Holding savings exclusively in dollars in an inflationary environment where the purchasing power of those dollars is being systematically reduced by policy decisions year after year is a form of losing money in slow motion. The statement balance does not show the loss. The grocery cart receipt does. The simplest summary of everything in this video: your dollar is shrinking. That is 54 years of public data from the government's own agencies. The mechanism causing it, money creation, is not going to stop because it is how modern governments manage every economic crisis. Silver is money that cannot be printed, has industrial demand that is structurally accelerating due to solar, EVs, and electronics, and costs less than a dinner out to begin owning. None of this requires special knowledge or insider access. The data is public. The purchase process is simple. The only thing that stands between understanding it and acting on it is the decision to make one purchase. The next time you are at checkout and the total on the screen surprises you, you now know exactly what is happening. The cart did not change. The food did not change. The dollar changed. And you have the option today, with $35, to own 1 ounce of something that cannot change by political decision. This video was not a pitch to get rich from silver. There are no guarantees in any asset class, and silver is genuinely volatile in the short term. What this was about is understanding the mechanism, the grocery cart mechanism, and then making one intentional decision based on that understanding. Most people who benefit from financial content are not the ones who already knew everything. They are the ones who heard something that made sense and then did one thing with it. Buffett once said, "Someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." A silver coin you purchase this month is a tree, not because it will make you wealthy by next quarter, but because it represents a decision to store some of your savings, some of your time and labor converted into money, in something that does not shrink by decree. The shade it provides is the purchasing power that will still be there when the dollar continues to do what it has been doing for more than 50 years. The tree you plant today grows in the one direction the government cannot control. If you stayed until the end of this video, write in the comments, "I plant the seed today." There is another video on your screen right now, the next piece of understanding how money actually works and what real financial protection looks like in a world where the dollar keeps shrinking. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.